Thanksgiving Thursday, a happy day to everyone here that is involved. Pulse of the Packs here because we know that you are thankful for us, or at least God, I hope so at this point, if you're still watching these, that you get some enjoyment out of this. I'm your host today, Jacob Westendorf, and I am joined by the lovely Jason Perrone, who I don't want to say I'm thankful for it. I'm just kind of stuck with him at this point.
Yeah, more or less. The feeling is mutual, and lovely is, I'll add that to the growing list of adjectives you have started off the show describing me with.
Yeah, I'm not quite Peter Bukowski level with my vocabulary, but then again, who is? So
no.
That's not an achievable format. So what is an achievable format is 9-3 for your Green Bay Packers. They will take on the New Jersey Giants on Sunday, and I call them the New Jersey Giants because I refuse to say New York because they are not from New York. They play in New Jersey. The Meadowlands is in New Jersey. So the last time the Packers were in New Jersey, they played the Jets last year, probably one of the best games of the season. An exciting little comeback, but otherwise kind of a miserable season. Last Sunday was a miserable Sunday. The Packers are looking to get over it. Aaron Jones talked about on Clubhouse Live that good teams don't lose 2 games in a row, and the Packers have not lost 2 games in a row yet this season, so usually that's the mark of a good team. Another mark of a good team, Jason, we've talked about this, the phrase I use is make your layups, and I don't want to be disrespectful to the Giants, but the Giants are freaking terrible. I mean, that's really the best way to do it. So, Jason, when we talked pre-show, you mentioned something along the lines of what did the Giants do well, and what did you come up with?
Nothing. I mean, if you want to compare it to what the Packers do, they have one more interception. But other than that, their run defense is a little bit better than Green Bay's. But in terms of in the annals of the NFL, it's nothing. So the only thing you have is a bunch of guys playing for jobs for next year and beyond, and Pat Shurmur obviously is coaching for his job. So, but I mean, as you've said many times before, Jake, and I think we know, Jabril Peppers actually is not with the Giants, or is he with the Giants? He's not going to play.
He is, but he's not going to play, right?
Yeah, he's not going to play. You can't, it's the whole make chicken salad analogy that you've used a couple times, and we all know how it goes.
Correct. And yeah, the Giants they have Daniel Jones, who they drafted in the first round. Jury remains out on him. I personally am not a fan. Saquon Barkley is a stud. Golden Tate may or may not play this week. He has a concussion. That's Jason's favorite. Yeah, that's Jason's favorite player. Evan Ingram didn't practice today. So there's some positives trending in Green Bay's direction. This is definitely not your Eli Manning, Justin Tuck, Michael Strahan, thorn in the side, 2-time Super Bowl champion New Jersey Giants. That being said, one bit of transaction news before we get too deep into the Giants, and that is that the Packers claimed Jared Veldheer off of waivers from the New England Patriots. Obviously, big news with Brian Bulaga sitting out, likely, Matt LaFleur wouldn't rule him out, but likely sitting out for a little while with a knee injury. This is insurance. I liken it to the break glass in case of emergency type signing that Ryan Grant was as a receiver.
Yep, exactly.
The difference being, I think this glass is more likely to be broken than the Ryan Grant one. Now, I could be wrong. That remains to be seen on Ryan Grant. I could be wrong on Jared Veldheer. I don't know. What I do know about Veldheer is he's at least a not terrible option at tackle, and that's something that is really valuable because there's not a lot of good tackles in the league and there's not a lot of average tackles in the league. And being an average tackle as a backup is so valuable just because you can have some faith that if he plays, you can put him out there and it's not going to go the route of Josh Walker and Don Barclay of the Arizona game in 2015.
Oh, Jesus.
Which, yeah, I mean, Aaron Rodgers is probably still feeling some of the effects from what happened on that day in Arizona. So some news there. Otherwise, relatively quiet on the transaction front, as you would imagine at this point. The Packers have this is the group that they have. Dance with the ones that brung you kind of thing here. And we're looking at now the New York Giants. Oh, I just screwed up my own thing. The New Jersey Giants on Sunday. And the big matchup, I think, in Green Bay's favor immediately is that I mentioned that Jimmy Garoppolo had some struggles with turnovers for the 49ers. this isn't even the same ballpark. Daniel Jones has 10 lost fumbles, and he has not played a full season. And the Packers, say what you will about their defense, they're usually pretty good at getting a couple of turnovers. They don't block very well. The Smith brothers could have a big day in terms of getting after the quarterback, and if you get after a bad quarterback, he's prone to turn the ball over. If you get after a good quarterback, he's prone to turn the ball over at times as well. So that's a big matchup there, Jason. And then when Jones does throw the ball and get passes off, he's prone to a few interceptions as well. The Giants don't exactly have a ton of weapons. This is one of those games, again, you look at it, and you don't want to overlook the Giants, especially after getting your ass kicked in San Francisco the way that you did. This is a game where these next two games really are that way, because Washington is very similar when they come back home to play them. Washington doesn't do anything well. The Giants might do just a few more things well. I guess there are some times where Daniel Jones looks like he's okay, and Saquon Barkley is a legitimate star. But in the passing game side of things, Jason, how important is it that Green Bay start to find a way to maybe get back on track, feeling good about themselves a little bit, especially considering, I mean, ever since I think the stat that I saw was week 4, they are one of the worst defenses in the NFL in terms of yards per game and big plays, 3-and-outs, everything. I'll see if I can find that. But they have been a bad unit. It seems like a really long time since Aaron Rodgers smiled on national television and we all agreed with him and said, we've got a defense. I'm not so sure that they do.
Well, the Giants are 26th in the NFL in passing defense by yards per game allowed at 260. Just for comparison's sake, the Packers are ranked 23rd at 255 yards a game, so there's 5 yards separating these two defenses. So if we're going to talk about the Giants' pass defense not being great, then we also are going to have to put it on par with the Packers right now, just in terms of yardage. Points is a different story. The Giants are giving up 28 points a game. Packers are only giving up 22 at this juncture. So selfishly, I want the passing game to work well this week because it's a road game. And Aaron Rodgers has taken a lot of heat, some of it warranted for some of his play on Sunday. The team did not play well at all. The protection was not great, but I do think that Rodgers left some plays and some yards out there, which would have maybe turned into some points. I don't know if they would have won, but now that the All-22 has come out, it looks like Rodgers did make a couple of bad reads. You know, he tried to make plays that in the past he's made that he doesn't make anymore right now. I'm specifically talking about with his feet. So if only because I want to hear some of those narratives and those comments die down. You know, I put a piece up today on Cheesehead TV about why we should all be thankful for Aaron Rodgers. I'd love for everybody to go check it out and read it. It's not a very stat-heavy piece. It just talks about remembering what Rodgers has done, where he's come from, and if you look at the numbers for all the struggles that he's had in the games that the Packers have not played well in this year, which fortunately has not been many, he is still having a good season by many standards. And one thing I want to note while we're talking about passing, he only has 2 interceptions this season, and one of those, I think maybe both of them, bounced off of a receiver. So he is taking care of the football, maybe to a little bit of a detriment because he's not being as decisive and he's not giving his receivers a chance to throw the ball. The one thing that I do want to see in the passing game, though, Jake, so I do need to say, yes, it needs to get going, and yes, it needs to do well this week. I do want to see this passing game do what it can do with Devontae Adams, because they haven't opened this thing up yet. And I don't want to point to all the excuses of Rodgers hasn't had time. The offensive line isn't allowing him, giving him the protection. The run game was shut down, so the defense teed off on the pass. They had 7 defensive backs. They were playing nickel. They were playing dime. I want to see Allen Lazard make a play. I want to see Marquez Valdez-Scantling catch a deep ball. We know that Geronimo Allison isn't going to do much, hopefully, so I don't have to worry about him. But Jimmy Graham, Jay Sternberger, I'm assuming Tanyan might not be ready yet for this week either. He needs to get these receivers back involved. If you can get the running backs involved in the passing game, please do, because if you get confidence and you say, okay, wow, we can do this. Now, again, this is against a Giants team that's not very good, but it's confidence building. And it's about those matchups. And you've got another one the following week against Washington at home where you can continue to build that momentum. And those types of things do carry on into the latter part of the season. So that's what I want to see is I want to see all these receivers get involved. I don't want it to see the, Devontae or throw it into the dirt show on Sunday.
Yeah, speaking of just a few clarifications, Robert Tanya did play last week. Jay Sternberg was a healthy scratch. So I will call that some early aging signs for my beloved co-host.
Well, I watched half the game, so.
Hard to blame you. I kind of wish that I had only watched that much as well. I think that, if we're looking at a few different things for the Packers this week, and that is the big one, you mentioned the passing game, something that he's not as good as he used to be. It's not the rabbit hole, if you will, with Janoris Jenkins, but he is still a pretty good cornerback, and there is a possibility that Rodgers might have to look elsewhere. And I'm not saying he's locking in on 17. I'm not buying into that narrative 100%. I do think it's very similar to a security blanket, and maybe it's like, oh, when in doubt, I'm under siege, where's Devontae kind of thing. Or when I break the pocket, kind of like what he used to do with Jordy when he would break the pocket. But I do think that the other guys have to win their matchups. Alan Lazard, Geronimo Allison. I mean, I don't want to pile on the guy. He's a professional. The Packers obviously have some fans of his in their locker room, and that has been helpful for him. That being said, I don't need to see him on the field, whether that's Jake Kumaro, whether that's Ryan Grant's coming off of the healthy scratch list, whether that's MVS and you're playing, if your 11 personnel is MVS, Adams, and Lazard, I think that's your best group as of right now. With your tight ends, kind of interchanging the way that they have, Mercedes Lewis, Jimmy Graham, Tanyan. I wouldn't mind seeing all four of those guys active with as much as they've been willing to play two tight ends, but that remains to be seen. But on the offensive side of the ball, yeah, I think the big thing is Aaron Rodgers talked about it today, how teams are defending Aaron Jones with defensive backs. Zach Cruz brought that up from the Packers Wire that they have a group of defensive backs that have been covering Jones in the passing game. So it's not just like they've just ignored him the last couple of weeks. But that is something still that I think they need to emphasize as much as possible, is getting him involved as much as possible, because he is this team's, without a doubt at all, second best playmaker behind Devontae Adams. And he makes life a hell of a lot easier on the quarterback, which is something that the Giants have the worst pass rush in the NFL. So, this is like going from the offensive line, pass blocking wise, is going from calculus to elementary subtraction. I mean, that's kind of what's going on this week in terms of going from the 49ers to the Giants. So keeping the quarterback clean shouldn't be a problem. Finding people.
It's interesting, Jake. I was just going to say real quick, I just looked this up. For that stat being true, the Giants do only have 2 fewer sacks on the season than do the Packers. So the pass rush may not be as effective, but I mean, it doesn't look like they're super awful at getting to the quarterback for what that's worth.
Fair enough. I wonder. I would have to dig into that a little bit more, but my understanding is that their pass rush is not dynamic, and it's definitely not.
They just blitz well too. There's a lot more that goes into it than just pass rush. So.
Yeah, and that could be something that remains, a problem for the Packers, is blitzing Aaron Rodgers appears to be a way to beat him now. But nonetheless, on the defensive side of the ball, like you mentioned, their run defense is a little bit better than Green Bay's is. And that's not saying much. I mean, Green Bay's ranked toward the bottom of the league in terms of their running defense. So this should be a game, I think, the Packers should be able to have whatever they want on offense. These are what we call get-right games. And this is a chance. I think what Green Bay's focus should be in these next 2 games. Definitely keep focus. Make your layups. Beat the opponent that's in front of you. Beat the Giants. Then beat Washington at home. And then beat a Bears team that may have given up by then. Depends. I mean, obviously they gotta win, likely on the horizon today, with the Lions starting a third-string quarterback. So that would put them to 6-6, and then they have a big Thursday night clash against Dallas. That being said, it just seems hard to believe that the Bears are going to be able to catch either Minnesota or anyone like that, the Seahawks, whoever it is that's in front of them. In terms of the wild card, even
I think your dryer basically just buzzed the Bears out and said, no, they're not going to catch anybody.
Yeah, that's unfortunate that worked out the way that it did. So I guess my dryer in the house tells me exactly what you want to know about the Bears' playoff chances. So 100%. Nonetheless, get them involved, get them out, and then be ready for Minnesota. That's going to be, I mean, assuming chalk takes place and we all kind of like Seattle to win that Monday night game against Minnesota this week, if that happens, Green Bay should be in the driver's seat to win the NFC North. Nonetheless, what you don't want, in my opinion at least, what you don't want is to go into Minnesota with the same record as the Vikings, because essentially that game then becomes the NFC North title game, because the Packers will be playing a Lions team that has likely given up the following week, and the Vikings will be playing a Bears team that has probably given up the following week as well. So you don't want to put your destiny in someone else's hands. Nonetheless, this should be how that game goes. On the defensive side of the ball, and we kind of broached it a little bit, but what I want to talk about is Saquon Barkley, because this is very similar to me to the Carolina game, except for the fact that the Giants don't have the weapons in the passing game like DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel, with Golden Tate likely missing the game. Sterling Shepard's okay, but they really don't have a whole lot in terms of their passing game. Evan Ingram is looking unlikely to play. That would be the Panthers' equivalent of Greg Olsen. Daniel Jones is probably a more talented passer than Kyle Allen, but they have some of the same tendencies to turn the ball over. And it sounds like the weather is going to be poor, which should play, at least in my thoughts, into Green Bay's hands, just because their quarterback takes care of the ball better. Green Bay's defense is better. Jason, if I had to draw it up, though, I mean, like I mentioned, the key is stopping Saquon Barkley. So do you expect Green Bay to play more of their base defense going into this game on Sunday?
I don't really know. I don't know what they're gonna do or how they're gonna plan it. Mike Pettine's been a little bit of a mystery, and sometimes he gets it right, sometimes he doesn't. So obviously Saquon Barkley's their best player, and I think he's the one thing that can blow things up if there is a guy that can blow things up offensively against the Packers defense. So I would assume that they would try to attack that, whether they do it with base or in another way, shape, or form. I'm not exactly sure, but the Giants would not seem to have the ability really to counter it much. So I guess we'll see more of the big guys up front. One player, and this is, something I want to mention, is for all the flack that Rashawn Gary keeps getting because his pass rushing stats have not been very good.
It's Ramshaw, bro.
It doesn't, first of all, it doesn't matter because the plan for him was not to come in and have 20 sacks this season anyway. Secondly, Rashawn Gary actually is pretty effective in playing against the run. So this could be a game where you actually see Rashawn Gary do something very impactful and very positive, and it's not going to be sacking Daniel Jones, although if he wants to grab a couple, that would be fantastic. But
if you want a hot take real quick,
yeah,
Ramshaw is the Packers' best run defender as an outside linebacker right now.
That doesn't that's not even a hot take. That's like that's a lukewarm cold take. It should be obvious.
Well, I know that Twitter likes to talk about Gary and how he sucks, and like I said, we very often come to the conclusions that we want to come to. For example, when I think about it, Favre fans always want to come to the conclusion that it's Aaron Rodgers' fault and that he's this awful, terrible person. And that's why the Packers are losing. Just as an example, people from this draft didn't want Gary to play. Not they didn't want Gary to play. They didn't want Gary at 12 overall. That's something that, Jason, we were together. It didn't really cross our minds that Ramshaw would be the Packers' first pick in that draft. So people wanted Brian Burns. People wanted Montez Sweat. People wanted Devin Bush. You name your guy. It doesn't matter who they wanted. It's not that player, so that means Gary sucks. So with that in mind, that's kind of why I like to remind people, Gary's a pretty good run defender. He was always a good run defender at Michigan. That was something that was going to translate right away. We knew it was going to take time with his pass rushing. If you have a chance, and I don't mean to keep pimping Peter's show, but go back to Locked On Packers and listen to Peter Bukowski's interview with Don Brown. And Don Brown is Michigan's defensive coordinator. He's got a lot of things to say. I thought it was really enlightening. But Jason, please go on.
For those of you who want to know who Ramshaw Gary is, you'll have to listen to our last show on, or maybe 2 shows ago, on Jacob's explanation of Ramshaw Gary.
Just go to Milwaukee. There's plenty of dudes out there with the big glasses, and they love to smell their own farts.
And that's one of the reasons why Ramshaw Gary is a real person and a real thing. But I think that that's something that the Packers can use, and I think he'll show up big in that space. Kenny Clark, a lot of these guys, you said it's a get right game. This is a game where it's like, look, okay, if they come out and they've key on Saquon Barkley, okay, and everybody's still going to mitigate, they're still going to negate and minimize what the Packers do. Even if they win 38-0 on Sunday, it's going to be like, oh, well, it was against the Giants. Who cares? But if the Packers can key on a guy like Saquon Barkley in his own building, keep him in check, win the game big, that is a huge, huge statement. And that's something that they can build on, and they can say, okay, now we can move forward. I don't know if Geis is back for Washington, but Geis is one of their top running backs. They've got that other guy who's terrible and takes sticks off of trees and stuff like that. But they've got guys that they can go after and try to target. Then you've got Cohen for the Bears, and then your consolation prize after all that's done is Dalvin Cook again on the turf in the U.S. Bank Stapler Bird Killer building, and they can then start to build some momentum towards stopping the run and killing this narrative that they're not a good run stopping team. Because when you get into later football, and again, I know we're getting ahead of ourselves here because the only thing the Packers have guaranteed is that they're not going to have a losing season. It is, although very highly improbable, not impossible, that they lose out and finish 8-8. But I have to assume they're going to make the playoffs. When you get to the playoffs, teams run the football. You got to be able to stop the run. Everybody says it doesn't matter if you can stop the run. It's a passing NFL. I don't care if you can stop, you got to start the pass. You have to be able to stop the run. Because you want to force teams into what you want them to do, and you want to make them more one-dimensional. So now I'm just getting into the cliche show. The bottom line is, this is big, and I think Rashawn Gary is going to be a huge, huge part of what we see on Sunday. And I want to see him make some big plays, and I want to see him get fired up and I want to see what kind of celebrations he's got.
I am all in on that. I think that I would love to see that. The three goggles that he used to do when he got sacks at Michigan, I missed those. So I'd be in. I'm interested to see how that goes because, the Packers, he hasn't been getting a lot of snaps. And I'm sure the big reason for that is that Za'Darius and Preston Smith are really fucking good. That's really what it boils down to, is that those guys are studs. And if you really look at it, if the teams are playing 65, 70 snaps a game, then the Smiths are playing 55 to 60 of those, and the other guys are kind of sprinkling in. Now it's a little disappointing, at least on my end, that Kyler Fackrell is out snapping him, but Kyler Fackrell's earned that. I think I know that he hasn't had the stat year that he had last year, but he has done some decent things. But in a game like this where a team wants to pound the rock, that ain't Kyler's game. So that's something that I hope Green Bay figures out, even though I should give Fackrell credit. The stop on Christian McCaffrey was a running play, and it was right at him. So he did make that play, and that was positive. But nonetheless, you start looking ahead a little bit. I often make the joke of why run when you can win kind of thing. And yes, I do agree that the passing game is more important. It's more efficient, etc. That being said, you can't get beat in the run game as badly as Green Bay has. And to their credit, they did a pretty good job, I thought, against San Francisco's running game on Sunday. The problem was San Francisco made two huge plays in the passing game, so it didn't really matter that they stopped the running game the way that they did.
The other thing, Jake, real quick, Saquon gets a lot of yards. Now, interestingly enough, if I sit here and look at this season, he's only broken 100 yards in 2 games so far this season. And those were weeks 1 and 2. He only has 2 touchdowns this season. So this would not be the week for the Packers to do the thing that I, jokingly claim that they do, which is they help teams break bad trends and let him go off for over 100 yards and score twice, which is something he hasn't done all season. But, that to me says the Packers also have an opportunity here. The way the Giants are using him, it looks like, they might get away from using their best player when they get down towards the goal line, or let's be honest, it's the Giants. They're not down there very often. So, as far as Saquon punching it in, it could be one of those things where between the 20s, he does a lot of damage. And then on the other side of it, maybe not so much. So, but the Packers still need to key on him.
With it being, before we get to predictions here, something else I want to talk about is Eli Manning, because I feel like we should give, in the affectionate words of Rodney Ruxin from the league, that mouth-breathing dummy, a little bit of a tribute here. But finishing my point up is they have to be able to at least get the Giants into favorable down and distances. That's something they weren't able to do against Philly. They weren't able to do it against Phillip Rivers. So their pass rushers, which is the strength of this defense, can't pin their ears back and go get that quarterback, with those two guys because they got to have some respect for that running game, especially in 2nd and 4, 3rd and 2, those kinds of things. Jason, before we get to predictions, I just mentioned I do want to talk about baby Eli, and I call him that because he's Peyton Manning's little brother. It remains baffling to me that those two guys – you want proof that quarterbacks is not a statistic, or quarterback wins is not a statistic. Eli Manning has won 2 Super Bowls, and he is awful. And awful's a little harsh. Definitely not a Hall of Famer, though. Eli Manning's had 2 good seasons in his career, both of which happened to end in the Super Bowl. And actually, no, now that I think about it, one of those years he wasn't even that good. But I know I've had this argument before. He's had 2 good seasons in his career. Eli Manning, if Eli Manning's name was Jones, we'd be talking about him as one of the worst quarterbacks to have ever won multiple Super Bowl titles. Whereas his brother Peyton is the best quarterback that I've probably ever seen play. And he has 2 also, and he kind of got carried by his defense to that second one. So you want proof right there, that's it in the pudding. So I just want to give a little bit of an ode to Eli Manning because I wanted to bring up that, yes, he did beat the Packers in 2 playoff games, 2 teams that probably could have gone to and maybe won a Super Bowl. Lost, or they beat him both times, but the last 2 times he was here, he was bad, old, and washed. And I really want to appreciate Eli Manning for being bad 3 years ago and for the Giants to hang on to him the way that they did for that time frame to essentially eliminate an NFC team from contention, and the facial expressions have been phenomenal. So God bless you, Eli Manning. I wish you well in retirement after this season, unless if some team is dumb enough to pay you to be their starter, then by all means, please make more money and give me more opportunity to make fun of you. Jason, let's go to predictions. It's Packers, it's Giants. It's a noon game. Thank God. I hate later games. I do. I want to get up. I want to watch the Packers at noon, and then I want to have the rest of my day to chill, watch the games if I want, go do something else if I don't want. But I hate Sunday night games, and I don't really like the afternoon games either. I like the routine of the noon game. So I appreciate that part. To me, I think we just said it. It's simple. Stop Saquon Barkley. Enough. He's going to have some plays. He's going to make some plays. He's Saquon Barkley. That's why he was the number 2 overall pick because Dave Gettleman's a moron. But that's another rabbit hole we don't want to crawl down. The Packers have every conceivable advantage in this game. Losing this game would be – you thought it was bad this week after they lost to the 49ers, the team with the best record in the NFL. This is the worst team in the NFL other than the Cincinnati Bengals. This team has the number 2 overall pick if the season ended today. They're horrible. It's on the road. The travel from West Coast late to East Coast early does concern me a little bit at least, so I think that'll make the game closer than it maybe should be. But that being said, I just don't see a way, unless Aaron Rodgers and the Packers just turn the ball over uncharacteristically more times than they normally do, for the Giants to win. Turnovers are a great equalizer. That's how bad teams typically beat good ones. I just can't picture it. I think Aaron Jones can have a big day. I think they're going to emphasize using him. I think Jamal Williams can have a big day. And I think that you can see some of the Packers' other guys, if you will, start to make some plays in the passing game for them and get right. And on defense, like I mentioned, Daniel Jones, turnover machine. Force fumbles, intercept his passes because he's going to give you opportunities to do that. That's what I got. So I like Green Bay in this game. Like I said, I think it'll be closer than it should be for a while, but a very comfortable 28-17 kind of win where the 17 really comes on a touchdown late after it was 28-10. Oh, I apologize. I should probably kick that to you. Jason, what do you have?
Oh, no. That was a kick. I'm smiling because I'm giving you an opportunity to speak before I start making my prediction.
Oh, I look forward to hearing how the Giants can win this game.
Well, the Giants can win this game one of 2 ways. The first one is the Packers plane is hijacked. I mean, I shouldn't joke about how plane being hijacked, but they never get there. And then the second one would be if there's any reason or some technical way that a team can forfeit a game, but I don't think the Packers want to do that. So I was going to go 28-17 as well, but I'm seeing 28-20 Packers. And I think it's one of those games where, there's a couple of stupid touchdowns sprinkled in amongst a bunch of field goals for the Giants, and it's just one of those games where you're never really worried. And it might start to look like it's going to get close, but the Giants are the Giants. So, the Packers get healthy, and they're not going to do anything for the narrative that they can't win going west or they can't win in California anymore because they're going east this time. But at least it should be, hey, they can travel and win a game, so everybody can just can it right now. Speaking of if the season ended, real quick before we go, the playoff machine is one of my favorite toys every year around this time.
Yeah, you have an addiction, and you need to get yourself some help.
Well, listen, it's what allows me to tell you what some of the scenarios are, and we have had some decent discussions surrounding that. So, obviously, it's a lot of what ifs, and so who cares because we don't know what's really going to actually happen. But the way that I've got it shaking out is I think that the Packers end up with the 3rd seed. If the season ended today, I think they would be the 3rd. They'd be the 3rd seed. They'd be hosting the Vikings in the first week of the wild card playoffs. But the way that I see things, right now, it just doesn't look like New Orleans is going to give up that number 1 overall seed. Or actually, the Niners are in the number 1 overall seed. But the way that their schedule sets up over the next 3 or 4 weeks, I think they're going to drop a couple games, and New Orleans may not. So then I've got New Orleans, and unfortunately, I believe Seattle would be in the second spot because I have them beating the Niners to win the NFC West, which would then make the Niners the number 5 wildcard team. So for whatever that's worth, we'll revisit it after next week, after this next week's slate of games go, and we can start to kind of look at some of the matchups because, again, it's all about matchups when we get into playoff football, which fortunately, thank God, we at least have the opportunity to hope for right now. Jake, in another couple of weeks, you and I are going to actually be able to talk about it. It's a beautiful thing because it's been almost 1,000 days, aka 3 years, since we've had the opportunity to do that. So before we sign off, I just want to wish everybody a very happy Thanksgiving, and to you, partner, as well, and your family and your beautiful baby daughter's first Thanksgiving ever.
That it is, and she had her shots the other day, so she is pissed at me right now. But yeah, wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving as well. You want to talk playoff football? I mean, something else on Sunday that you mentioned that the Packers have clinched they won't have a losing season. Sunday clinches their first winning season since 2016. That's something. It's not nothing. I mean, if they finish 9-7 and miss the playoffs, obviously we're all pissed and disappointed. But it's not nothing to finish with a winning season when you haven't won in a couple of years, especially where guys like, I mean, you look at some of the guys in this locker room, Jair, anybody that was drafted, 3 years ago now, has never experienced a winning season in Green Bay. So this is all new to them. Jair Alexander, Josh Jackson, some of those guys, they haven't experienced winning on a Packers team, and that's not nothing, especially for a coach that's trying to establish his new culture with Matt LaFleur and everything that they're trying to do on that side of things. But yes, that is going to be an exciting thing to discuss. I'm just excited and ready. I really hope, obviously I hope Green Bay gets a bye because it helps their chances anyways, but I just find divisional matchups in the wild card round to be really lame. And it really seems like we're headed for a collision course where the team that wins the NFC North is going to host the runner-up in the NFC North on Wild Card weekend. And that would just suck. I don't like it, just for whatever that's worth. So probably not a whole hell of a lot. That's going to do it for this show, though. Be sure to check us out on YouTube. We are Pulse of the Pack on YouTube. We've seen an uptick, so we thank you guys. Stick around. We're working on some improvements. Eventually, this is going to turn into a bit of a studio, so I have some new stuff coming to help kind of ease that transition and just make some higher quality stuff so you guys aren't looking at what looks like me in a basement because, well, that's where I'm at. But I just needed a few more things. So I've been able to do that, and we're looking to make some improvements. So that's positive there. Check us out on Twitter. We are at Packer Pulse. You can follow Jason. He is at Jason Perrone. And you can follow me. I am at Jacob Westendorf, giving you all of apparently the thing that I said today that pissed everybody off was that I thought that Jack Nicholson's version of the Joker was better than Heath Ledger's. So, sorry. Feel free to light me on fire if that's the case, but Jack is the man. So that's my opinion. I'm sticking to it, damn it. For all of you Donovan Sims and all you other people that said stuff to me, there's like 5 of you, so I can't remember all of your names, and that was an hour ago. So get a life. I don't know what else to say to that. Check me out on Dairyland Express. I just had something there the other day. I resurrected myself on that site because Paul Brettel, one of our friends, gave me a chance to do that, talking about Mike Pettin. I think that's a good discussion and a good question. Jason, we kind of talked about it the other night, but I kind of put it in some written form. Obviously, Packer Report, and you can find Jason with the lovely folks over at Cheesehead TV. Thank you guys for listening. This went way longer than we anticipated, so we're sorry for that. But as always, go Pack, go.